And there she is.
Hey, what's
Welcome
happening?
to 50 Starting Over. I'm Barry Edwards.
And I'm Merle Garrison.
And I'm late because Charlie and I were at the rental house, and my intention was always to come over early this morning, put my computer back together here, bring Charlie, and do the show. He didn't want to come. He went into his cage at the other house because he hates driving. He gets motion sick and he throws up all the time.
Oh no, he throws up in the car.
Yes.
Oh my
so
gosh.
I got this blanket, an outdoor blanket and everything for that reason. But now he's to the point, he's so conditioned with this negative reinforcement that he just starts drooling like crazy as soon as he gets in there. Oh, I remember telling you before, and you were like, yeah, he's probably green under that fur there. You just can't see it. It's gotten so bad. And so I've done some research about what to do. And Dramamine is the number one recommended cure for this. I've been experimenting with it. I hate drugging my puppy.
Yeah. Does it have like a drug effect? Does it cause him to be, lethargic? Yeah.
So I tried it the one time. I took him out to see my mom last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long drive. And
that is.
And so the dosage is supposed to be 2 to 4 milligrams per pound. Well, that's a little vague, 2 to 4. So you go in the middle, 3. Okay. And I haven't had him weighed in months. So I'm going to conservatively say he's 30. He's probably 35 to 40 pounds, but I say 30. So that's 3 times 30 is 90 milligrams. That sounds like a lot. It's almost 2 of the pills. Well, I gave him 1, 50 milligrams. And we went out there and, he did throw up again. So it didn't totally work. But I would say it took the edge off. Like, he's such a spaz. He was like a perfect dog. He was all excited, all happy, and but he was well behaved. So that's where we're at with it. I guess I need to try a pill and a half. I need him to have some good experiences to get over this conditioning that he's had. Like, it's
tough when you can't take your dog in the car. It's so limiting.
I've never had a dog that didn't love going for a ride. Yeah. Because their experiences would always be, well, we're going somewhere cool. We're going to go see grandma. We're going to the beach, going to the park, something. And so you know what I think? I think I need to do some short drives like that. Force them in there, go somewhere cool, like a park. Let them have a good time. And
short ride.
Yeah, and try to get some positive reinforcement.
Yeah. Stella had she didn't like being in the car either. She didn't get sick, but when I got her, she was already 5, and I think the only rides she had ever been on was to the vet, right? So I would get her in the car and she would just bark and not stop barking, and it would be just unbearable. Like, this is terrible.
Yes.
And but at first I was like, okay, I'm not taking her anyway. In fact, I found a vet that was within walking distance, so we would just walk over to the vet.
How great! Yeah,
you know what? That was a great thing, but it prevented us from it actually provided an excuse for me not to put her in the car. So I just wouldn't take her any place. But through the years, I started to think, I want to take her places. So
right.
I ended up kind of breaking her in, and after a while, she was pretty good in the car.
Okay. So that's good to hear. So I have hope.
Yeah.
If I do these short rides to something positive, like I was saying.
But I tell you, I feel sorry for Charlie, just because if he is really getting motion sickness, that is one of the worst feelings ever.
I've never had it.
Have you ever been seasick?
No.
Okay. No. Well, it's the same thing, really. You're nauseated. You almost feel like just somebody knocked me out. This is this is miserable. I would compare it to at one time in my life, I smoked cigarettes. And if you've ever smoked too many cigarettes, you get that nausea. It's just complete nausea is what it is. And it's just a terrible, terrible feeling.
I'm a bad dad. Oh my God.
No, you're not a bad dad. You gotta, you're trying to figure out ways to help them out and everything. And you want them to be a part of the family when you bring them over to mom's house and everything. It's, I think it's commendable that you're trying to figure it out and all. And so keep it up. That's your baby boy.
Oh, I do love the guy. He's a good dog. I mean, when I say I'm going to go to the store or something, he goes right into his cage and no problem.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I like that. So he's smart. Where is he? Now, I notice he's not back behind you today.
No, so he's still at the house. He's in his cage.
He wouldn't come.
Right. And that's why I forgot. That's why I'm late, is because of going through all that with him. I put the computer in the car. I wanted to get him. He didn't want to come. So I'm like, fine, I'll just come back and get you later. I forgot my keyboard and mouse. So I had to go back and get it. And that's why I was late.
Oh, geez. Well, you've had quite a morning.
Yeah. So then when I restart my computer, it takes a good 10 minutes for everything to reboot. It's just a lot of stuff.
Right. Hey, I wanted to tell you that I enjoyed your last show, Over 50 Starting Over with Dan the Fireman. And
for you.
I had never met Dan before, so it was really cool to see him on the screen, and
did a great job.
I thought he did too. And I was it was funny because I was with my family last week, and I pulled up the show and we started watching it, and there were several comments that he's very similar to you.
To me,
I think,
or
you. I think Anne Marie said that, boy, those two could be brothers.
Oh yeah, we've gotten that the whole 20 years we've been friends, for sure, and our voices are almost identical.
They said that, boy, they even talk alike.
Very true. Very true.
I think one of the stories was that that Dan was mistaken for you when you guys first met, or something like that.
He was, before we met, the day we met. He came into this bar where I was playing pool with a friend, and the bartender goes, "Are you Barry's brother?"
Yeah,
goes,
that was it.
Barry?
Right. Yeah,
but
who's Barry?
I would always ride my bike to his house, and his neighbors would all wave at me and, "Hey, Dan."
Oh, that's hilarious.
No kidding. I mean, yeah.
You know what's good is that people liked him and no one threw rocks at you.
Very true. He is very popular, very, very social. He and Janine are the perfect couple in that regard. They're super social, and good for our ratings. And it was a really fun. I was really looking forward to it. I was very prepared. There's all those things about him that this year he became a granddad for the first time.
Boy,
he
that's
got
something.
Married, and he's retiring. And retiring at the age of 52 is like, wow.
That is amazing right there. Yeah. I was kind of jealous seeing that. And I was kind of, I'll even admit that I was almost a little bit angry. Like, come on, he gets to retire. And then he started talking about going to Europe and Spain and everything. And I just wanted to jump through the screen and change places with him.
I want to reiterate that it's a good listen. We didn't get to that until towards the end of the show, but he is exploring doing what they call roving retirement. And I want to reiterate this because we have an older audience that really doesn't think in this way for the most part. We are kind of stuck with staying in the United States for the most part and that kind of stuff. But today, with our very remote way of living, a lot of people are going overseas. In fact, there's a lot of people living in Thailand, Mexico, Mexico is dicey. I love Mexico, been there several times. I've always loved it, but the cartel really runs that country, and they're scary. Was it you and I were talking about? I was like, oh my God, just in the news, I think it was with the Dan thing last week, in the news last week, a week ago, last Wednesday, in the news, these 5 guys on jet skis in army garb, camouflage, machine guns, storm a beach in Cancun, a resort, and just start firing in the air. And I think that since they didn't actually shoot anybody, there wasn't anything, they planned something. So what was the plan? I think, and they just left their jet skis behind. So money's not an option with these guys. I guess the plan was simply to announce that, hey, no one's safe. The cartel owns this country.
Yeah, no kidding. And this is not unusual. This kind of thing has been happening frequently there. And we've been hearing about this where they roll up on the beach and shoot the place up. And sometimes it's different factions battling against each other. People get caught in the crossfire. So you're right. I mean, it's a dangerous place, but
such a beautiful country. It's such a shame.
But getting back to really the roving, what was it called?
Roving retirement.
Roving retirement.
He's thinking about each year going to a different tropical location. Like we've always wanted to go ever since we went to Spain. No, it was actually after Greece. Went to Spain in 2002.
Right.
Went to Greece in 2006. And as we were in Greece, we were on the internet looking up the Canary Islands of Spain as a next destination, but we virtually got married and stuff. And, so I think he's going to do that as one of his retirement, for 3 months.
How cool is that?
And, oh, it's so cool. So cool. And like I told him, he's going to start checking out doing Airbnb because he's always had renters all these years in this part of his duplex.
He lives in a duplex, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What a smart move that was. He's had his mortgage paid this entire time.
He very smart what he did. I found it interesting when he talked about his pension and how he actually had to pay into that. I was not aware that they had to do anything like that, but that was interesting. And then I might have missed a part, but it sounded like you guys were talking about him potentially opening up some kind of bar or something in his garage.
Yeah, that was a little bit tongue in cheek because, like I said, they're so social. Every weekend they have people over watching football in the garage, a detached garage. He put a wood burning fireplace in there.
Wow.
He put ventilation in so they could smoke cigars, and of course a widescreen TV.
Right.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, what a cool really thing that would be. If you could open up a bar, something like that in your neighborhood. I don't know if legally if you can do that or not, but it sounds like a really cool idea.
Yeah. So it came about because, you and I are always talking about, especially he and I had the conversation about, so you got a lot of time on your hands ahead of you. What are you going to do? And, he did explain at first, it's going to take him a while to get used to being a regular civilian again because of just the other night, 2 nights ago, he had a shift. I was just talking to him. He had 2 fires in Cleveland Heights, which that's unusual. So he didn't sleep hardly at all that night. And that's kind of like, it's not uncommon when you're a fireman. And he says, so the other thing is too, simply eating a meal. He goes, you're shoveling it in because
that was interesting. That you always think about these firemen, and one thing I always thought was, hey, they get to eat all that good food, but I didn't think about the fact that they gotta eat it so fast.
Because that's the thing. When they don't have calls, they got nothing but time to kill. Right. So they do make, he's an amazing cook himself, and he cooks a lot for the firemen. And they do eat very well, but those calls can be quite an interruption.
I kind of took away some of the glamour there of being able to enjoy. I can imagine making some really great food up in the firehouse, and then ding, ding, ding. Oh, we got to leave everything here.
Yeah.
I wonder how many fires have been started because they left the stove on going out to a fire. Anyway, I was kind of surprised when he said that he really, you asked him, well, what's your plan? And he didn't really have a plan for after retirement. That kind of surprised me.
That's why I brought up, and I have a few times to him, his passion is making wine. and he's really good at it. So he makes them straight from the grapes now, California grapes. And he has looked into interest in local bars and stuff wanting to sell his wine, and he's found some interest. So he might do something with that, but he's not going to be in a hurry. He wants to decompress for a while. Totally understand that.
Yeah, I can see that too.
I want to plug the after show of last week,
which I did not see.
Oh, okay. It was really good. And Lisa said that she liked it even more than the regular show because, I wanted to ask him about some of his calls, his most interesting calls over all these years. And trust me, you get any fireman into a corner and start, ask them those questions, you got an entertaining conversation on hand. And that's, I started to ask him in the original show and we just went on a tangent. We got away from it. Right, so that's what the after show is about his more interesting calls. Very much an eye opener. There's a lot of yucks in that show. So I want to tell you about something I want to get back to, but I want to mention that if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, just go to our channel. You'll see it right there, the 5.7 after show. If you subscribe to our podcast of choice, and I recommend Spotify if you like the video, but if you subscribe to the podcast, you get our regular show on Friday, and then I schedule our after show to come up on Monday mornings at 5 a.m., give you something to work out to and start the week with. After show is usually pretty loose. It's fun. So it's a good way to start the week. So one thing that he said that was very eye-opening in the after show, talking about his calls, I said, what's some of the more emotional one? And he said, in general, he goes, suicides.
Right. They get called on suicides.
Yeah, that's what I said. I mean, because the big eye opener here is we've been such good friends for so many years, and he never mentioned that before. He said, so I get about 2 to 3 calls a year, a suicide. And he goes, times 20, he goes, I've seen about 100 suicides in my, and he says that's the one thing that it's hard to shake, but he goes, I guess we compartmentalize that because he's such a well-adjusted guy. I just don't know how seeing that, how that doesn't affect you.
Sure. Well, it's got to affect you.
He says that they have a great access to mental health professionals.
Right.
Which I think is amazing.
I think especially in that line of work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Very disturbing. Very disturbing. So, yeah. Okay, that's that. Yeah, go seek out that episode. It's a great one.
Wow. Wow.
No, that really bothered me.
Yeah,
that part
no
really
kidding.
But there's a lot of laughs otherwise.
Right. Hey, I had a great experience going out to Arizona last week and really enjoyed myself. My parents were visiting for the last, they're going to be there for the month, and they come out to Arizona to my stepfather's sister's place, and she lives in what they call a park home. I think we talked about this a couple episodes ago. It's sort of like a mini house it's like a mobile home park, but it's not. They're not mobile. They're mobile homes.
They're built out.
Yeah, it's really
just
interesting.
like my mother-in-law's house.
Hers was really very, very nice, and there was a fire pit outside and everything.
Oh, cool.
But it's like a retirement community. It's 55 and over. So
same with my mother-in-law's. Yeah.
It's funny that they were saying, "Oh, you qualify to live here." And which kind of felt kind of weird, right. But I found that it was a huge community. They got like a recreation area. People were playing what is it, pickleball? I don't know what that is. It's like tennis, and they've got these big paddles, and you should have seen them out there. I mean, these people were super active, and everybody's walking their dog around the beautiful neighborhood, and everybody's got these golf carts, and they're just cruising around on these golf carts, very, very active. And if you stand outside for any amount of time, somebody will stop by on their golf cart and just start talking to you. very friendly people. I very much and enjoyed it. And in some ways, it kind of reminded me of that movie Cocoon. Everybody, but it was more of a even more of a healthy kind of an atmosphere. But everybody seemed like such a wonderful character. I met some interesting people over there. And one of them, Chaz Allen, is a guy that I met over there. He's turns out he was a B-52 pilot in the Vietnam War. So a real charismatic kind of guy. It was kind of fun talking to him. It turns out that he's an author as well. He did a stint in Hollywood. Worked with let's remember that show Growing Pains. He was a writer for that show. Kirk Cameron was on that show. It was a sitcom, but he did some writing on that show and some other things. Worked with Paul Harvey as a writer there, which I don't know if you ever listened to Paul Harvey before.
Back in the day, sure. Well, he died a long time ago.
He did, but it was the rest of the story. Apparently he had written. Yeah, I loved those stories because at the end you'd find out that he was talking about somebody that you knew about, and oh my gosh, I didn't know that. But Chaz
was on NPR, I think, was it?
Yeah, I heard him on a lot of different stations actually. So, but he has written several books, and he's also one of those guys that does the reading for Audify. Are you familiar with Audify?
Well, I'm thinking Audible.
Maybe that's what it is. Audible, Audify. It's Audible. You're right. Audible is the name of Audify. I'm thinking of Spotify.
Right.
But Audible, he's done over 100 of these books. Apparently, he's got his a setup in his park home. Very simple. He says you just got to have a good microphone, and you can do this kind of work. And that's apparently what he's doing today.
There is a particular website for that, to do that. And it's kind of like if you've ever heard of Fiverr, where you hire freelancers and stuff. But there's a particular website for doing the Audible readings. And I heard a podcast about how you break in, and if you got the voice, and if you can go ahead and do a sample, go ahead and do it and offer to do the first one for free. That's how you get started. That's all there is.
Is that right? You know, I was wanting to get to that part of the conversation because I love to read, and I always thought, hey,
you got a great voice, man. You could do that.
Be pretty fun, actually, depending on the book that I read. And but I went online and checked out some of his books, and one of them that I actually downloaded this on Audible. It's called the True Never Before Told Stories of the Great Stars of Hollywood. It's a long title, but very much Paul Harvey-esque. It's all these I listened to like 15 chapters now, and they're very quick, probably about 3 to 4 minutes each. And each one of these stories at the end, you're totally surprised by, oh my gosh, really? I had no idea. But a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun meeting him. And he brought over his girlfriend, Susan, and another woman that was Susan's friend from Iowa. Her name was Barb, and she is a recent widow. And, she's like in her mid-50s, and her husband was a physician and passed away. He had cancer. And, she's still dealing with that. Just curious,
do you know what kind of cancer?
I don't know what kind of cancer.
I always seem to hear pancreatic, and it's a bad way to go.
Boy, I don't know if there's a good way to go in cancer, because every story that I've ever heard sounds just awful. And the stories she was telling were heartbreaking. Barb, who's a very young, mid-50s person, obviously this rocked her world. And one of the things that I heard from her was that, look, there's very few support mechanisms for people that are recently widowed. And so I just wanted to go through a couple of things that she was saying. That was kind of surprising. My mother, she lost my father in her early 50s. So, it's just something I don't think about, and it's something we haven't talked about on the show, but this is, something that could happen.
Yeah.
it's not going to happen to me, but it could, that's what everybody thinks, right? And so she had just relocated after living for 27 years in the same place with her husband. So her whole world has died. Let's see. So a few things that she brought up that I thought were important was one surprise that she had was shortly after her husband died, all of her credit cards were canceled. And it turns out that the funeral home, one of the jobs that they do is they get a hold of Social Security to let them know that someone has passed away. And Social Security then informs the credit card companies to go ahead and cancel the cards for fraud purposes. But here, she had the credit card in her name, but it was underneath of her husband. And so these are things that it really rocked her world, because she was traveling at the time, and suddenly she had no way of really paying for anything. To add insult to injury, she also found that her credit score dropped dramatically, instantly
as a result of that.
Yeah, she went from in the mid 800. She was like 832. She went to 613 very quickly. So these are amazing. Now, she did say,
so unfair.
It does seem so unfair.
Getting punched in the stomach at a time like that.
There's a couple other things that I did not know was that now the government gives a payment to people that lose their spouse, $255.
Oh,
I don't know what you're supposed to do with that. Right. That is kind of almost, well, I have nothing to say about that. Here's another one was, you can't draw Social Security benefits from your husband if your spouse dies until the age of 60. So you can get these benefits, Social Security benefits, but like if your husband would have been of age, you can't get this until you're 60. But if you get married before you're 60 years old, that gets cut off. You don't get any benefits. So can't get it's a really weird thing, but a lot of people don't know this. And obviously you want to get back into your regular life and everything, but financially you've spent a lifetime with your spouse, and this is a part of your retirement plan. It's just something to think about. It's a pretty serious thing to think about. These are all things that you need to think about. And one of the things that I heard during the conversation was the first thing you want to make sure you do is get with the bank, get your money out of the bank, because these are assets that can be tied up and also go directly to the government. So those were some of the things. One of the big things she said was she did find a great resource to help out. It's online. Facebook has something called Late Night Widows and Widowers, and I actually checked out their page, and it was pretty interesting information on there. It talks about let's see if I can find it here. It says, welcome to Late Night Widows and Widowers. This group was established in 2013, 1 year after my wife passed away suddenly. It was formed to support those who could not sleep at night after the loss of their spouse. I can't imagine. Night times have got to be the worst.
Oh, God, yeah.
Since then, it has become a source of 24/7 day a week support. Here you'll meet many people who share similar stories of grief that's like your own. And we're also different than what you get from more of the traditional online Facebook groups. It says we joke, we laugh, we cry, but most importantly, we care. We support each other. Any problems you ever have in Late Night Widows or widowers, report it to blah, blah, blah. It goes on. And then they've got some rules like no self-harm posts, no GoFundMe without permission, no pictures of death, no hate speech. It goes on. But she said, Barb, this is a really big help for her. Like I said, she had a hard time finding support groups, and I can imagine just the loneliness that must accompany this.
I can't.
Here's a place that that they can go for help.
That's a real eye opener. I'm really glad that you shared that, and it makes me realize how unprepared I am to even talk about it. I know nothing about what to do if Lisa passes, if I pass, what she can do, and we talk about it a bit, but you've opened up my eyes to the financial aspect.
Yes. Yeah.
Late nights. It's thank God at least there's that Facebook group. That's all that means everything to have that kind of a cathartic group where you can, there's other people out there feel the same way I do. Because boy, there's nothing lonelier than thinking you're on an island by yourself with whatever trouble you may be having.
Yeah, and you could be in the middle. It seems that grief really, no matter what kind of grief it is, when the lights go down and you're by yourself, that's when the bad thoughts come in. And what a great thing that you could just get up and go to your computer at any time and talk to somebody that knows what you're going through and has been there, done that before, and
give you advice because you're finding your way. Yeah, I mean, it's a whole new ball game now, and you're finding your way. And I'm sure this group, a lot of people be like, "Oh, well, this is what I found. You should look into this." And
she talked about the fact also on her credit cards that they had all these points that a lot of points that they had accumulated over many years, and she did get those points back, but it took her 6 months in working with the credit card companies to be able to get that. So, I mean, they talk about insult to injury. This is a big deal. And you're right, Barry, this is something as she was talking about these things, I thought about the same thing, like, gosh, I need to think about this. And Anne Marie and I had some talks about it, but I mean, we need to talk some more about it. My father talked about this all the time, and I hated it. Why are you talking about this? Nothing's going to happen to you. And when he did pass away at age 55, I remember there were certain things he had told me that in my grief, I was almost like I was on automatic pilot. I just did these things that he had talked about because he did talk about them so many times. So there is a tremendous benefit to having these kinds of conversations.
Oh, that's for sure. We've talked about that before. There's this Western thing that we got all backwards that you bring up death and you just turn around and walk away. We don't like to talk about it. It's because it's not pleasant, but we've mentioned it before. It's worth mentioning again. It is a Buddhist philosophy that you should contemplate death, your own death, the death of others. You and I've talked about contemplating the death of your dog, which can be very traumatic. And it just takes the irrational edge off of it when you are faced with it. Not to mention, preparing so that you get your affairs in order so everything doesn't go to probate and the state takes a big chunk of everything. That's very important as well.
Hey, I wanted to transition over here to a movie review, so get ready with your cool picture and your graphics. But here we are in the holiday season, and gosh, Barry, Christmas Eve is a week from today. I can't even believe it. How did this happen? The year is almost over.
It's a week.
It's a week and a day to Christmas.
So, are you seeing the graphic?
Yes, I am. Okay. Look at those guys right there, right out of Hollywood. Anyway, before I went on my trip, I saw this movie. As I've said before, I like Turner classic movies. It's an escape mechanism for me because these old movies, they just do them differently. And a lot of them make you feel really good.
And today they're dark and edgy. And,
right. Even the film quality sometimes is dark. Like there's a filter they're using, I think, and just anyway, but they didn't do that, and these are black and white movies anyhow. This one's called The Bishop's Wife. There was a remake in 1996 with Denzel Washington and Whitney Houston, But this one actually was with David Niven and Cary Grant, and it's a 1947 movie by Samuel Goldwyn. It's a romantic comedy feature film. Now, this one is a Christmas movie. And it's about the bishop, who is played by David Niven, and he's troubled with funding the building of a new cathedral, and he prays for divine guidance, and his plea is seemingly answered by a suave angel named Dudley, who's Cary Grant, and he reveals his identity only to the clergyman. I'm going to tell you this. This is one of these movies that you might think, I don't know about this. This one makes you feel so good. Cary Grant as this angel is just great in this part, and I won't spoil the movie. I guess I told my stepfather Larry about this. He's like, man, you haven't seen that movie? Everybody's seen that movie.
I never heard of it.
This one's a really good one. If you get a chance, it'll get you in the mood. It'll make you feel that good Christmas kind of feeling, awesome. Goodwill towards man kind of feeling. It's called The Bishop's Wife, and it came on Turner Classic Movies. That's what I saw, and I just really enjoyed that. Anne Marie and I watched it together, and it just made us feel really good. So I highly recommend that. You know, we live in a world today that is full of bad news and lots of crazy stuff coming at us. I just find this kind of stuff is a great way to escape all of that and reset your whole mindset towards good. And there's more good that's happening in the world than bad. I think we're just conditioned to look at the bad too much. And
we are. And what a perfect segue you just created for me right there. Because we are the media, you know, we went from having 4 or 5 channels to choose from to having endless thousands and thousands of different of media. We're just and
there's still nothing on TV.
Very true. But as we've talked about before, humans are conditioned to seek out the negative news because it's a survival mechanism. We want to know what the dangers are so we can avoid them. And if anybody that tells you everything's great, well, then there's nothing to do. All right. Okay. Everything's good. So, yeah, nothing more to do. So Jordan Peterson had a different kind of a podcast last week where, because he's often talking about like we are, got to admit, we're talking about how gloomy the future looks in one way or another, whether it's China or whatever's going to happen with AI and different things like that. Well, he interviewed the author of a book, and I'm just going to read what the notes that I have here. Much of it is the intro to the podcast, which I highly recommend you seek out. It's only like an hour and 15 minutes. It's Jordan Peterson, season 4, episode 65, The Progress of the Human Race, part 1. They didn't make any mention about part 2, but I sure am looking forward to it because I loved this podcast. And let me read this here. It's all positive news about all the great accomplishments that we have
glad to hear this.
Been going through and how positive the future actually looks, if you can believe that. All we ever hear about on mainstream news is the world is in dire straits, that we are going in an irreversible direction, and it's all our fault. Throughout many conversations in season 4 of this podcast, we've explored these narratives in depth, and we would like to promote an alternative narrative. Here's some interesting facts. While the population has doubled in the last 50 years, our farmland has decreased by 68% due to the Green Revolution, which brought about careful breeding of important new crops like dwarf wheat and nitrogen-fixing fertilizers. So we made our farmland so much more efficient, because if we didn't, as they talked about, we would have had to basically made all of our earth farmland to support our doubled population. If you recall, when we were kids, the population was 4 billion.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Now we're almost 8 billion. In 1981, 42% of the world's population was living in what's called, quote, absolute poverty. In 1981, 42% of the world's population lived in absolute poverty. By 2018, that number fallen to 8.1%. It's something like 170,000 people per day are being pulled out of poverty because of the increase in wealth worldwide. By 2030, we're on pace to have less than 5% of the world's population living in poverty. We also have nearly ended world hunger. Over the last 50 years, we added nearly 1,000 calories per day to the world food supply average. The world's poorest region, the sub-Saharan Africa, has roughly the same access to food as Portugal did in the 1960s. As of the last survey of 2017, only 2 out of 173 nations in this world have food access averages under 2,000 calories per day. I mean, you remember what it was like when we were kids. All we heard about was all the starving nations across the world. All the people starving.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, these are things we don't know. I'm going to blow your mind with this one. This one blew my mind. Remember the rainforest?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have also drastically increased the supply of tree coverage across the globe. Resources are being used more efficiently than ever before. We've added tree coverage land the size of Alaska and Montana combined.
Wow.
Worldwide. So that isn't a problem anymore. They also went on to talk about, remember, we always heard about the dangers of the growing amount of carbon dioxide, CO2.
Right.
Plants love that stuff.
They do.
They
what
thrive
makes them grow, right? Yeah, that's what I remember.
All of this has been rectifying itself, and we don't know that. If you and I were to talk about this prior to 2 minutes ago about the trees and all that, we'd start going down this doom and gloom road about all the rainforest being, Well,
why don't they talk about this on the news?
Because it's good news.
Yeah, but the
reforestation efforts across the world have just turned this around. We finally got, and if you think about it, we very quickly, they talked about how prior to the Industrial Revolution, we made everything from trees. I mean, right down to your log cabin and your wagon and tools, everything was made of trees, but we didn't know it to replenish the forests.
Because there were so many of them.
Yeah, it was a seemingly endless thing. And so, then we go into the Amazon and just, rape that. And we've turned that all around. But we're also not as nearly as dependent on wood anymore as we used to be because of other materials. So I thought that was kind of shocking. The global economy has grown over 100 times itself over the last 200 years.
Jeez.
Yes.
I've seen that. Yeah.
What do you think about cities? Oh, they're terrible. The pillaging that they do to the environment and all of that. No, actually, cities are a great thing. They're way more energy efficient than rural communities. If you think of 100 people in an apartment building versus 100 different houses, you need much less road per capita per person, and they provide much more innovation. Face it, all of our greatest innovations and even art comes from out of city thing in New York City, Silicon Valley, you name it. When you get the people together, I mean, group thinking is infinitely more advanced than solo thinking. The parts are greater than the sum.
Yeah.
I say that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, so that's another thing that we've thought kind of backwards about forever. So it also pulls people out of the rural areas into cities, leaving all of this great land to be natural and for other animals to live how they should. So these are all a great thing. And in something like 50% of our population lives in the major cities, which is a very small, tiny area in comparison. Most of us thought we'd overpopulate the planet and produce famine as a result, right? I mean, here we go. That. We doubled our population.
That all our lives.
There you go. Now all studies show that we'll peak around 10.5 billion, then decrease from there as women have entered the workforce worldwide and have access to birth control. We are reproducing much less. I'd also say we are decentivized by If you think about much of the middle class has chosen not to reproduce as much because it's expensive.
Mm,
and
it is expensive.
So they didn't mention that, but I think that's part of it because that sounds so negative. But so anyways, they said if there is anything to worry about, it's that in 100 years, we're going to have such an aged population that we won't have enough younger people to work and support the elderly. So, there is that, but we're not in any threat to overpopulate because of the trends that have been shown. There are legitimate reasons to be concerned about specific issues that still need to improve, but overall, the data is undeniable. We are living in an age of seemingly impossible progress in nearly every sector imaginable. So that is the end of my summary of that podcast.
That is awesome.
Yeah, check it out. Jordan Peterson, season 4, episode 65, Progress of the Human Race. Amazing. In fact, I'll probably listen to it again because it was great.
I love hearing all of that good news. And again, you're right. I mean, it's, people aren't drawn to good news. They want to hear the bad news, but there's so much more good going on in the world than bad. And, if we just open up our eyes and look around, we're going to see it. We're going to see it.
We'll go.
Hey, I wanted to tell you about a book that this kind of brings flipping the coin and looking at the other side.
I knew it was going to happen. If you didn't do it, I would.
But I just got done reading this great book. I love this author. His name is Jeff Shara, and he's written a lot of these history books that actually, I'm looking for the summary here. Here we go. That actually are history books, but the way that he writes them in novel format. So it's actually the actual history, but he tells the story from so many different people's point of view, and you end up really getting an education of what's going on in the story from historical figures, some figures that are real people, but you might not know them. He picks obscure people to tell from their point of view. This one's called To the Last Man, and it is a story told about World War I and how it started and different points of view from different people. General Pershing, who led the war for the United States, and the different historical figures there, from as well as the people that were fighting on the ground level. I didn't know a lot about World War I. That's one of those wars that we don't see a lot of movies about. World War I. We don't really hear a lot about it. We hear about World War II, and some of the other wars that we're in, but gosh, I was blown away by the history behind this war. And I just, I find this writer very compelling, and it's a page turner. It was a long book, but I couldn't stop reading it. I just wanted to hear more. Some of the battle scenes in this movie, from the trench warfare that was going on, it's amazing how many people died during this war. Over 10 million soldiers died on the battlefield during this 4-year war. 10 million soldiers died. Wow. It's outrageous when you really think about this.
Hey, you know what? I want to just interject because you made me think of another thing that they talked about in that podcast, how the wars, hot wars, as they say, are almost non-existent now, whereas it used to be a way of life.
It's interesting how it's actually changed. I really believe we're in a war right now, actually, but it's a unconventional war. Yeah, it's a whole different kind of warfare that's going on right now.
That's which the way it goes today.
Has casualties as well.
Sure does.
But let me get to that in a second, because that's a very important topic. But here is some of the interesting things that were happening. The Spanish flu was happening during World War I. We've talked about that several times, but it was interesting to hear the point of view from the soldiers that were getting letters from their family, and they're saying that they're wearing masks. People are dying. That was kind of an interesting thing. The Sedition Act happened during World War I.
What is that?
Very wild. You weren't allowed to speak poorly about the war or about the president, or you're going to jail.
In America?
In 1918. Yes.
I can't even believe
Congress passed the Sedition Act. It was signed into law by President Woodrow Wilson.
Wow.
And this was a thing that happened. And so sometimes we think about like, oh my gosh, look at what's happening today with censorship and things like that. This is many of the things that are happening right now today happened 100 years ago.
Wow. That's a shock. And you know what? That's another positive, because that's a positive.
You're right, Barry.
We've survived it before.
It means we can get through this, and that this isn't something that has to be happening on a continual basis. And I think it has a lot to do with just our founding and our real DNA as Americans. Brings us right back to freedom again, and that's what happened. I'm liking
this particular podcast more and more as we go along.
Here's another one, Barry. I didn't know this. I knew we were involved in World War I, and it started in 1914, ended in 1918. But America didn't actually get involved in World War I until 1917. So a year before the war ended. But our troops really didn't actually get onto the ground until May of 1918. The war ended in November 11th, 1918. So from May until November was the American involvement in World War I. So what, 6 months? In that time period, 55,000 Americans were killed. Okay, now, if you really want to put that into perspective, this was mind-blowing to me. We always think about Vietnam and how tragic Vietnam was. Do you know how many people we lost in the Vietnam War over a 10-year period of time? 55,000.
Oh, no kidding.
So think about the devastating war that was happening, this trench warfare that's just... They had this new technology that was happening. And within 6 months, we lost as many people as we lost in a 10-year war in Vietnam.
Wow.
It's just mind-blowing. And when you really start to take a look at this, the way World War I ended, the Allies, mainly the English and the French, really wanted revenge. And so through the Treaty of Versailles, they enacted these very punitive rules against Germany, which really backfired and brought on the rise of Nazism, and which really, you look at World War II, it's really the sequel to World War I.
Yeah, it is.
And it has everything to do with the seeds of how that war ended. Really,
the failure of the League of Nations.
You know, I've heard historians talk about our entry into World War II, and that if America had not ended or had not gotten into World War II, because that really shifted the balance of power in the war, and it ended the war pretty quickly on the favor of the Allies. But I've heard historians talk about the fact that this was a stalemate, and as a result of the death, 10 million soldiers, each side was really running out of men to wage war against each other, and that this war without American involvement would have ended with an armistice that would have been more of a mutual armistice, and that there wouldn't have been this revenge factor, that they would have just ended up having to call a truce and lay down their arms, and there wouldn't have been this whole revenge factor that led to World War II. An interesting way of looking at it, but that's not how it worked, and therefore our entire world changed as a result. Even the things that are happening today, the seeds of the things that we're dealing with today, the world powers, the balance of powers, all stem back to this particular war. But if you get a chance, if you like history, Jeff Shara, he's written a ton of books. they're all superb, and you can find them on Kindle or you can order them through Barnes and Noble.
Well, that's really interesting. And it brings me up to yet another positive point that they talked about on the podcast that I didn't write down. Talked about democracy. We've never had a more free world than we have currently today. And that's spreading as well. So that's really nice to know. You made me think about it because of when you think about the wars of just a couple generations ago, the history, all of the war, all the conquering of civilizations. It's all we did. A point that I'm just coming to is something that I say a lot. We never realize how young civilization is. We think that we're so advanced, and we're barely coming out of all of these wars. We're still all these different countries speaking different languages. There'll be a day, if we don't kill ourselves, there'll be a day where we'll all speak the same language and probably have a more united government. And I hope it's not Chinese. But
there's positives and negatives to that. I mean,
everything's always a slippery slope. It can go anyway.
Right.
If you're not careful.
Right. Yeah, you're right. We see that there is a push towards a one world government that we're seeing today through things like the European Union and the UN and things like that, and really some of these NGOs, non-governmental organizations, have become bigger than many world governments these days, and so you do see this push for control. Some of them have very good ramifications, and others not so good. So it's going to be interesting. The future is very interesting. I suspect that in any time period you go to, probably people are thinking the same way we think, is that, hey, this is it. Nothing's going to change from here. This is how the world is, and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But then that's just not the truth. So
very true. And sometimes we have to take a step backwards in order to go forward. And what I mean by that, this is just so dumb. A current event. San Francisco Mayor London Breed announces a plan to go after the, quote, BS that has destroyed our city. Got a link to that. And for the most part, she's just calling on more policing in the neighborhoods. A predictable move, but a noteworthy one at the same time, given how eagerly progressives in cities like San Francisco embraced the movement to defund the police in the summer of 2020. So they had to figure this out the hard way, that defunding the police was going to lead to more violence. It's kind of amazing, isn't it?
It really is. I've got a video that I actually want to play on that.
Yeah. I heard a video of hers yesterday.
I'm just going to play a piece of this. Hopefully I've got my sound on.
Well, remind me, I got a good quote to share. I mean, I didn't have a bookmark, but she was asked by a reporter the other day, hey, do you think it should be illegal to do for you Congress people to do trading?
She hates that question.
She does. Boy, it makes her face really
her face changes into like fire bolts are coming out of her eyes.
And she's like, very entertaining. Of course not. It's a free market. Nancy, that's not a free market. That's a fixed market.
Well, this goes back to the question. Hopefully you'll be able to hear the question, but it has to do with all this crime that's happening here. And really, to your point, she's actually responding to what the San Francisco mayor
doesn't know. Yeah,
had said. So check it out.
What the problem is.
Said about some of the issues specific to San Francisco, some of the retailers leaving there as well.
Well, it is. It's absolutely outrageous. Obviously, it cannot continue. But the fact is that there is an attitude of lawlessness in our country that springs from I don't know where. Maybe you do.
That's all I wanted to play. I don't know where. Maybe you do.
Yeah.
it's almost laughable, actually.
It's disgusting. She's a horrible human being, and she's like 80. Why doesn't she get out of the game already?
That's a good question. I was watching a report recently, and they were showing, and they had a picture of Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Fauci, some other people too, and the whole thing was, why is our American leadership so old? Why these people are all like 80 plus years old?
I think power is addictive. I just think the power is addictive. And I mean, her and her husband are worth $150 million because of the inside trading.
It is. And think about it. And we, not to mention lobbyists that are paying these people off and everything. Right. We've talked about this before, how these people own these multiple multi-million-dollar homes all over the country. And how could you do that when we see what your salary is? It's public information. So you can't really afford those.
So are there trades, though? And this is going on all throughout Congress. And so I think I mentioned, kids on TikTok have picked up on this and just simply do the exact same trades that they're doing. And her husband have been doing and making 20%, an easy 20%.
Wow. Wow. What?
Because they know that they're getting the inside. That her husband, it's been recorded repeatedly that he'll make certain trades days before they pass certain legislation that is going to affect an industry. It's so crooked, and it's not illegal. It's just immoral as all get out.
Meanwhile, these political decisions have been made that have really hurt our economy. And as we're seeing here, inflation is going up and up and up. And here we are in the holidays. I've got an article here that says that many people are actually sitting out this holiday season. They're not buying gifts. This one is saying that this holiday, 11.5% of people plan on sitting out the season by not spending anything on presents, gift cards, or other items for entertaining, according to a survey by Deloitte. That's a record amount of Americans on the sideline, as long as this consulting firm has been keeping track. And that's a sad commentary.
Yeah, it is. It is.
We're looking at inflation. Another article that came out is that inflation's jumped to the highest level in nearly 40 years here in this country. Ooh, man. And the jobs number came out well short of where they were predicting it was going to be. So we've got this whole Build Back Better thing that they've been trying to pass, and it
doesn't look like it's going to.
Well, at least
into next
it's going to go into next year.
A lot of people think it's not going to happen.
Boy, I hope it doesn't, because you see the effect that these other bills have made. I'm thankful that I know that this Joe Manchin boy, I know he's getting a lot of pressure, but he's right in what he's saying, is that this is just going to add to the inflation woes that we're all dealing with. This isn't political. This is everyone's dealing with this. You go to the store. I again had this experience this past week where we went to the store and we got one of the little carts. They have the little carts in there, $200. Like, what? How could that happen?
I know. Oh, it's bad. It's bad. We're seeing it on the shelves for sure. All right, let's lighten this up a bit, shall we? This is real light, but a real nice story. Man drives to Mayfield, Kentucky, and we know that it got completely ravaged with the tornadoes there 2 weeks ago. Was it 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, last week, actually.
Okay, with a grill and a truckload of food for 10 tornado victims. Average everyday Joe. Oh, you know what? I do this every time.
You got to press that little button.
I hate that. Yeah, it's like invisible. I
know. I almost missed it myself.
Yeah.
I know electric, no restaurants, and no running water, so figure I'd do what I can do. Show up with some food and some water. Trying to feed the people.
Just an average everyday Joe.
Hamburgers, chicken, I got sausage, eggs. Just a little simple stuff that you can have and not have to worry about making a mess, or grab and go type of food.
Yeah, are you from the area?
I was born in Paducah. but I came down here today from Clarksville.
You came out here just to cook for people? Wow. You have a restaurant, or you?
No, sir. Just needed to be done.
That's it, man.
Wow.
Isn't
Look at
great?
that building behind him, too. I mean, gosh.
Yeah.
That thing is
got leveled.
wrecked.
And
No kidding.
boy, Amazon is getting drugged through the fire here as a result of this too. They told, as I recall, they told their workers that they'd be fired if they left when they wanted, everything's
heard
just about
that.
to hit the fan.
Yeah.
Amazon's
allowed to
always in the news for just how horrible they treat their workers.
Boy, but what a ray of sunshine this guy is, bringing food and water down there. I mean, he's just doing what needs to be done, and especially during the holidays, it's good to know. When I was in Arizona, this woman from Iowa was there that I was talking about, Barb, and she was, looking at her phone, and gosh, this is getting close to where we are and everything as well. I mean, it's pretty amazing that something like that would happen at this time of year too.
Yeah. It's
you don't normally hear about tornadoes like that in December.
Wow. And God, how many were there? There was, an unbelievable amount. I remember reading it, but I don't remember the number.
I don't know either.
I
did see a picture of the tornado, one of them, but this one in Kentucky, I couldn't believe the size of this thing. It was a monster.
Yeah.
How horrifying. We don't have anything like that here in Los Angeles. Tornadoes don't.
No, you got
here.
Gavin Newsom though.
Yeah, he's the tornado, I guess.
And the fires.
He's bigger than the whole state.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right.
With that, we should wrap up. We're going to go into the after show. If you guys care to join us, like I said before, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll get it right on our channel, and or pull up your podcast app of choice, subscribe to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, whatever, and you'll get the after show on Monday morning at 5 a.m. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. And